Welcome back. President Trump is warning countries not to back away from negotiated trade deals already in place following the Supreme Court's ruling against the president's emergency use for tariffs. The president wrote on Truth Social last night, any country that tries to, quote, play games will face even higher tariffs than the ones previously agreed upon. Senate Democrats, meanwhile, are introducing legislation requiring the Trump administration to refund up to $175 billion they claim were unlawfully collected. House Speaker Mike Johnson warned Congress is unlikely to find consensus on codifying the president's tariff agenda into legislation. Joining me now is Georgia Congressman Andrew Clyde, a member of the House Budget and Appropriations Committees. Congressman, good to see you. What are your thoughts on codifying these tariffs? Do you agree that there's not consensus there among Republicans if you wanted to perhaps put it into a reconciliation package?
Well, good morning, Maria. You know, the president has plenty of tariff authority already, whether it's the 1934 Reciprocal Tariffs Agreement or the 1962 Expansion in Trade Agreement or the 1974 Trade Act. I mean, the president already has those authorities. I don't know that Congress is going to give him any more or take any away right now. I don't think you'll find agreement there for that. But the president has to have the ability to immediately respond to the world. The world is getting smaller right now, and he has to have that ability, and I think he has it in what we've given him.
Yeah, I mean, today is the day that the 15% universal tariff is supposed to go live via Section 122. And Secretary of Treasury Scott Bessent joined me right after the Supreme Court ruled and talked about the president's path ahead. Watch this.
This ruling was a very narrow ruling in terms of the president's ability to use IEEPA to collect revenues. The Supreme Court said the president can put in a full embargo, but he cannot collect $1. So the president still has the most draconian measure for negotiations, and that under Sections 232, Sections 301, we're already collecting substantial tariff revenue. The IEEPA tariffs are going to be replaced in 3 days with the Section 122. Treasury projections show 2026 revenues are from tariffs unchanged, and all the out years unchanged. What is going to happen, the president announced on Friday and then amended over the weekend, 15% global tariff using a very robust authority from 1974. Those will be layered on with Section 232, Section 301, and the 122s, they run for 150 days, and during that time, Commerce, USTR will be doing studies, and the studies will likely lead to increased tariff revenues. We've been in contact with our foreign trading partners, and they like the tariff deals. Yeah. So they're not going to be changed. And the president remains undeterred in his determination to lower our trade deficit and bring manufacturing back to the U.S.
And so, Congressman, you heard what the Secretary said there. You don't have consensus on codifying any of this because of debt? What's the reason?
Well, I think the Secretary is absolutely right on when he says that the president has the authority under Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. If we don't have consensus in Congress to codify what the president wants to do under the Emergencies Act, then I think he still has the authority, and I would take the warning of the Secretary if I was another country and not doubt President Trump. He's going to do what President Trump thinks he needs to for this country.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, your colleagues on the left have effectively stopped business here in Washington with the Department of Homeland Security shut down. Now it's suspending global entry and airport courtesy escorts for members of Congress as this shutdown stretches into a second week. TSA pre-check apparently is going to remain operational. Of course, first they announced it was going to be shut down, pre-check down. They said, no, it's going to continue. Republicans hoping momentum from the president's State of the Union tonight will restart the talks. What are you expecting? Because some believe the missed paychecks for DHS workers could also be pressuring Democrats to compromise.
Well, I think this is what broke the Democrats back in October, November, was the TSA and the shutdown, literally, of many aspects of TSA, the air traffic controllers, and the reduced number of flights. So this is a huge pressure point, and I think that that we're going to see some results from it. You know, the Democrats, this is all a smokescreen from them. They're trying to say that they're using the non-funding of DHS as a way to prevent ICE from doing its job. ICE was tremendously funded through the One Big Beautiful Bill. We did that already, so that's not going to happen. You know, ICE is going to continue to do what they're responsible to do, and that is remove illegal aliens, violent criminals from this country. And is all that the Democrats are doing is hurting, whether it's Secret Service or FEMA or the Coast Guard or TSA or the air traffic controllers. That's it. That's all they're doing right there.
Yeah, I know, but they have also effectively put a stall on a Senate vote on the Save America Act. This is legislation requiring proof of citizenship to vote, Congressman. I spoke with Senator Mike Lee on Sunday, and, you know, I brought up something that seems to be really, to me, a dishonest way to look at it. When the Democrats say, oh, you know, we'll sign on to ID to vote as long as it's just a driver's license. We all know that the driver's license issuing process has been wildly abused. Here's Senator Lee with me on Sunday. Watch this.
In nearly all 50 states, you can get a driver's license even if you are not a U.S. citizen. In 19 states plus D.C., you can get a driver's license even if you're a known illegal immigrant.
Right.
And that's exactly why we've got to do this, because under the 1993 NVRA, if you fill out one of these forms, check the box and sign your name, that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
When applying for a driver's license, to simultaneously register to vote. That's why that's not enough, because in nearly every state, you can go through that process. And as long as you're willing to lie on that form and sign your name to it, then you can register to vote. There ought to be more required than that.
So, Congressman, it would have been nice to put a spotlight on that on the Senate floor. If your colleagues in the Senate would have done a talking filibuster, but that can't happen until the Department of Homeland Security reopens. So they've effectively killed that as well right now.
Well, I'll tell you that Senator John Thune needs to bring up the Save America Act. I think that's exactly what needs to happen. We've got the State of the Union tonight, Maria, and I think with Senator John Thune right down there in front of the president, I think he's going to be very bold and very strong in demanding that the Save America Act come forward. And Senator Lee's absolutely right. You don't have to be a citizen to get a driver's license. So a driver's license is not enough to prove citizenship. Only citizens should be voting, and there should be photo ID required in order to prove who you are to vote. I mean, those are just simple things that 80+% of America agrees on, Republican and Democrat. So this needs to come to the Senate floor for debate.
Yeah, I know that's going to be a critical part of the president's address tonight. What else are you hoping the president addresses tonight in the State of the Union, Congressman?
Oh, I think he's going to bring a bold vision for America moving forward. I mean, under President Trump, America is safer, stronger, more prosperous, and definitely respected, actually feared on the world stage now. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to say. We can tout the wins of the past, the secure border, the reduction in inflation, you know, the prosperity of our country. But I'm really looking forward to what he has to say about the future.
As are we all. We will be there. Thank you so much, Congressman Andrew Clyde, this morning, joining us on Capitol Hill. Thank you, sir. Stay with us. We'll be right back.